Hello everyone, it's V, and I'm trying something a little bit different with my SPEEDPAINT setup today. And I'm going to tell you the wonderful story of how I almost deleted this whole comic literally 6 hours in. And so I was doing this for my art class, right? And so I wanted to write a story about a historian or a follower of a goddess or something. She's related to this goddess somehow, and she's really devoted to her. Or whatever, but she's really sad. But then the moon goddess just appears, but she doesn't know how to react with humans, like how to talk to them, whatever. And so she makes her a little star, and she gives it to her, and they both live happily ever after, you know? So while I was doing this, I was really excited, and I was spending a lot of time on it, like way more than such a basic art class honestly needs, because it's not like I go to art school or anything. I just take my normal classes and I take art for fun, like as an elective, right? And so while I was working on this, my art teacher came by and he's like, oh, since you're doing this digitally, make sure that your like aspect ratio or whatever is correct. Make sure that your canvas is the right size for us to be able to print it out properly. I don't know a lot of the terminology, but that's basically the gist of it. And so I was like, cool, great, I'm so excited to have like a physical copy of this because I usually don't, you know, it's all on the internet. And so I went into Procreate and I hit the crop and resize button, and I was stupid enough to exit the drawing before I finished it. And that means, if you're not familiar with Procreate, once you exit a drawing, you cannot undo. Procreate doesn't like autosave. Well, it does if you just exit it or exit the app or whatever, but it doesn't save previous iterations of the drawing unless you like just did it. And so I cut off the entire bottom half of this drawing that at this point I had spent 6 hours on. I've spent probably 12 hours total on this, right? And so you can imagine I was, you know, devastated. And I was kind of, you know, considering just completely having to redo it because I really didn't want to redo it, but the whole thing just did not fit. I couldn't have just cut off that last part of the panel because then the story wouldn't be finished, you know? And I don't know how well I actually conveyed the story, but as I said, I was very proud of this. And so here you can see the part that I cut off, which, you know, I'm honestly not that upset about because I did not really like how it looked. But at the time, you know, I had way more antagonistic feelings towards Procreate than I do at the moment. But essentially, I ended up just shrinking all of the panels down a little bit to make it better fit. See, here it is. Here's where this is me redrawing it because I cut it off, and I decided I have this like extra space. This shot of the moon goddess creating the star, it's already so big and outside the confines of the panel. Let's just say her magical hair is just spreading throughout the whole thing. I think that'll make a really cool composition. So I did that, and then I kept going with it, like what if all of the hair is connected and it's not just this last panel where she's going outside of the confines of the boxes, it's all of them that she's in. And so you can kind of see a bit later that her hair connects to all the pieces of hair all around the canvas. And then I kind of went even farther with it and made it so that only the moon goddess was colored in and the follower was in grayscale. And I know it's kind of like muted colors, but later on when I do shading in the dress and I put stars in her hair and all that, it's a little more clear what I was going for. And then right in the last panel, when she gives her follower or the historian or whatever, her star, I have a multiply layer or an overlay layer, and you can see that the color is just going into her skin. So I don't know if she's made into like a goddess or a demigod, or if it's just that like something the moon goddess created that's making that light appear, but I was really proud of it. Another thing that was really frustrating about this piece was the moon goddess's hair. Because there was just so much of it, it was just really difficult. As you can see on my little avatar here and in the drawing itself, I always do this like circle shady thing. I don't know where I learned it from, but if it's done correctly, it makes the highlights look really like fun and it gives them a good shape. But while I was doing that, I realized that the whole canvas looked really busy and it was just too much. And I had the same problem with when I was adding the stars later, where it was just too much, you know? And so I was really conflicted about it, because I was like, I don't want to learn how to reshade this hair. Maybe I can just erase part of it or make it solid. But I eventually got to a point where I was happy with the level of sleek hair, the amount of shiny that the hair had. And I also learned basically a whole new kind of method of shading. I usually do cell shading, and then if I'm feeling really adventurous, I maybe color in the line art a little bit differently, or I like blend out the shading on the skin. If you don't know what cell shading is, it's kind of what I have with the hair, where it's like very solid, distinct lines. Think about, or like in a lot of cartoons or in anime, they'll use cell shading. And so I usually do that, but I actually, while I was working on the clouds and the dresses and even like the smoke where the stars created, I wanted it to look a bit cooler, a bit more well developed, almost like ethereal and floating in space, you know, it's space. And so I went through Procreate's pretty awful different types of blending brushes, and I actually found one that I liked, which was the 6B pencil, which is also what I used for line art. I had never used it for blending before, and so I was really proud of that. And I also found a lot of really cool brushes for the backgrounds in air quotes, because it's all like grayscale and not like actual backgrounds, it's just shapes. But I was struggling here. I was trying to like remember my webtoon phase from like 4 years ago and like, oh, what did they do? But honestly, the webtoons that I read at the time were a bit suspect and not very good. I mean, honestly, the art was really good, but plot-wise, eh. Anyway, you can see I'm kind of finishing up. I wanted to talk about character design, but I can do that in the end card. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe, follow me everywhere, all that jazz, give me attention. Basically what I did for the character design was I wanted to have a lot of blues, and I also wanted to have some ocean associations because, you know, the moon pulls the tides, and also mostly Avatar, honestly, if I'm being completely honest. I tried to do that with the long flowing hair, kind of like ocean waves, all that jazz. You know, the pearls, and her dress is supposed to like dissolve into sea foam towards the end. And so I don't know if it really came through. I think it's more general space vibes, but I did have some pretty cool alternative designs that I'll put on screen now.